All right, everybody, Pastor G is back. We are back. You are joining Community Conversations. My name is John E. Gurton Jr., Virtual Pastor G. And y'all know what we do with Community Conversations. This is all about talking to people in our community servants, urban servant leaders throughout this country who are doing great work in the community, have great concerns about the upliftment and betterment of people of color throughout this country. And so it's been a marathon day, just so that y'all can see and know. We've had some awesome interviews on today. God bless all of those who have been on before us. But we had a little technical difficulties, but we're going to get her back on all the way from Los Angeles, California. Miss Lana Reid is in the house. There you are. Hey, how you doing?
Hello. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Good. It is good to have you on. And again, just so everybody knows, she's not in Indianapolis. She is in Los Angeles, California. She is a speaker and author. She has a serious concern about what I think a lot of us recognize as one of the number one issues in our country, and that is the family. That is the household. That is what's going on in homes where children are growing up, and what we need to do in order to make sure that we take care of number one. And you know what, Lana, let me just hit something real quick. I'm going to ask you a question real fast. Are you ready?
Go ahead.
I'm going to ask you a question real fast. And that is around this idea of what the pandemic has really done to send people back into their homes and expose I don't know about you, but my house needs to be my respite. My home needs to be the place where if no matter what happens to me out in the world, no matter what happens to me during my normal business day, when I come home, that's where I'm supposed to be able to let my hair down. That's where I'm supposed to get my rest, recharge, and go back out. And COVID has sent people back home, and almost seemed like when they went home, they found out that they didn't really like home as much as they thought they did. Am I missing it? Or talk to me.
No. I think that is one of the biggest learning lessons we've had with what's going on here is how disconnected that we have become with what actually is home life supposed to be about. Now, your peace, your respite is supposed to be your family unit. And we have gotten so caught up in recent generations with, I got to go to work, after work, I got to do this, with things, not understanding that our nucleus, our family is actually where our source of peace and respite is supposed to come from. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what COVID-19 is really exposing to us, that we have gotten so off track with where we should be. The normal life that we have been living is really abnormal. I think that's what COVID-19 has really brought to focus for us.
Mm-hmm. So having said that, one of the things that we continue to hear, and you're in California, from what I understand, based on the numbers, California's numbers are going up. Am I correct?
Indeed. California, Houston, Florida, all going up. And California had one of the better, or what was perceived to as one of the better responses to dealing with COVID-19. But yet, here it is, our numbers. But we could say that part of that has to do with California also has the largest homeless population in the United States. Mm-hmm. We have the largest number of people in the United States. So It could be that. But yeah, our numbers are going back up. We're back into pulling back our reopening process and everything like that. But yeah, our numbers are growing.
Now, and a lot of that has had to do, and I want to get into a lot of things today. I want to get into a lot of things today, and so let me use COVID and the fact that we had been what they call it, bringing the curve down. I don't remember what they said, but flattening the curve. That's what they said.
Flattening the curve.
We had been flattening the curve and all that good stuff, and everything was seemingly going in the right direction. People were supposed to be wearing masks and all that kind of good stuff. And it seemed like we were doing the right thing. And then what began to surface was these videos of people just overdoing it on Memorial Day, and people overdoing it and going, and things like that. Do you sense that what was happening in California, as well as the other 30 some odd states where the numbers have started to trend in the wrong direction, do you think it had something to do with people just wanting to get out of the house, cabin fever? What was it to you?
I mean, I really think it's a pervading thought process with American culture. We tend to be in American society is very individualistic, right? It's the core of us being Americans. I live this freedom. I'm entitled to liberty, pursuit of happiness. I can do what I want to do, and I want minimal government control in my lifestyle. So we have a sense of entitlement overall as Americans. Nobody can tell me what to do. So I think when you saw a lot of the numbers spiking Memorial Day weekend and everything, also you have a lot of people saying, you can't tell me what to do. I'm not going to wear the mask. I'm going to congregate in groups of 10s or more. It's all a conspiracy or whatever. But I think the spike in COVID-19 came from, a lot of it has to do with we as Americans don't want to be collective in our thinking, in our actions. We want to be more individualistic in our thinking and our actions.
Mm-hmm. And you know what? And this is, I did a rant podcast. Some of y'all saw it, where the title of the podcast was why I'm struggling with Independence Day, right? And part of that was because of what you just said. And I do agree that what we see as independence is working against us fundamentally. Because if we cannot be interdependent, if we can't think interdependence, if we can't think about what I do does have an effect on the person next to me. It does. I don't have to know that person to know that what I do right now can impact their life, right? You had a guy who was upset because he was a bus driver. Somebody got on the bus and sneezed on everybody. Did you see that story?
Yes, I saw that one. Yeah.
And within a couple of weeks, he had contracted COVID and passed away. But he had posted a video, and again, it gets back to that point: are we independent, or are we interdependent? Are we so concerned about ourselves that we miss the fact that not being concerned about others undermines even self? Come on, help me with that.
That's true. And the things that we are being asked to do as a collective in American society are so minor, so minute. Just asking you to wear a mask. It's not a great
a sacrifice
impact.
or ask.
Yeah, it's not a great ask on your lifestyle. We're just asking you to wear a mask. We're just asking you to, maybe stay 6 feet apart. So why all of a sudden is it that just for the greater good, whether or not it's a benefit or not, because we're still finding out news on a day-to-day basis about this virus, whether or not it pans out to be true or not, but the inconvenience to your lifestyle overall is so minute. Why is this such a big issue for you? I think we saw on the news just the other day, this lady just full ballistic in a Home Depot because she was asked to wear a mask.
Right.
Is that in the bigger picture of things? Is that really so much of an issue to take a stance on your independence, my liberty to do whatever I want to, versus the interdependence, as you say, of the society as a whole, as everybody you might encounter in that Home Depot or the restaurant or grocery store? Is it really worth it?
And so what are we really, okay, you deal with Black health. I mean, that's something that you deal with, right? So what is this moment of us thinking that we're flattening the curve, the disparities that COVID has exposed racially throughout the country, the politicizing of masks that is going on right now? What is this communicating to our younger generations and our community as a whole, as you have watched this played out with regard to the health of African Americans in this country? What is this really saying about our country when we can't flatten the curve and we can't think about other people? I mean, what is it? How is it communicating to my 13-year-old from your perspective?
Communicating to your 13. Well, I think one of the things for me is very painful. And I don't know what age bracket you're in, but I'm 50. So I'm kind of stuck in the middle of the old school generation of Black community versus what we see now with this new school, your millennials. But there used to be a larger sense of community. Mm-hmm. My actions.
Well, we all said it. It takes a village. We all said it. It takes a village. I mean, that's our thing.
Yeah. So there was an understanding that my actions, even though they're me as an individual, have an impact on the community as a whole. Mm-hmm. What you tend to see we've gravitated towards today with younger generation, your 13-year-old, is it's not necessarily, it's me, my entitlement. It's more so about myself versus what my actions, what my doing has on the entire community. Mm-hmm. Now, the beauty of what's going on, not only with COVID-19 and also with the Black Lives Matter movement, is a lot of the younger generation are starting to realize and see the impact of how their individual actions do play out on a larger forum, mm-hmm. So with your 13-year-old understanding, and they're going to have so many stressors on them because, now we're talking about opening schools. Mm-hmm. Now I have friends that I have to worry about if I don't wear my mask, mm-hmm. if I don't sanitize. My actions impact them. So I have this good buddy that, he's got playing football or she's playing in the band or whatever. If I do not behave myself or act accordingly, I can affect them. So I think it's a great learning moment for this generation, this younger generation, to start to learn again, relearn again, that my actions have an impact not only on myself, but larger people. You have a larger community. Even in your household, I have your 13-year-old has a grandmother or so. His not taking care of his health standards has a potential to impact his grandmother.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. Very much on that. And you really said it, and I had to write it down. Y'all be wondering what I be doing. I be writing Right, that's what I be doing. I be writing. I had to write this down because and you really said it. And this is it. I think that what this season seems to be communicating to other people, unfortunately, when folk go to these hospitals and go to the state house with AR-15s and they're demanding that the country opens because they're concerned about their jobs and concerned about the economy, and people are demanding that schools open and all that, whether or not we've got it all figured out in terms of how to keep everybody safe. What I think we're really communicating is that your actions impact me, not so much my actions impact you. In other words, the mentality is what you're doing is squashing or diminishing my right to do what I want to do, as opposed to turning that around and thinking, what am I doing that's impacting you? Is this making sense?
True.
And so if we don't get that straight, that the first question isn't how what you're doing is impacting me and making me uncomfortable. It's about, let me think about how what I'm doing might be making my grandmother uncomfortable or might be making my neighbor uncomfortable. And I don't know, is that seemingly a hard thing for us to do, to flip that statement around and go from being so concerned about my comfort to being concerned about my brother? I mean, the Bible says, love your neighbor as yourself. I'm my brother's keeper, right?
True.
So if if we operating on that, then I should think about you just as much as I think about me. What do you think about that?
Sure, it sounds good. I mean, and that's how it should play out. But clearly, there's an issue with it, because we would not have all of these instances, and that's the beauty of social media. We get to see some of this dysfunction going on. And so if that was the case, then we would see more people being more empathetic towards your grandmother or the stranger. But what we have are people, and sadly, I see a lot of us wanting to push back on, things like mask or COVID-19 is a scam or conspiracy. You know what I'm saying? But the numbers are showing in our community, it's us, and especially our Black men, that are being affected more so by this. So why not, right, wrong, or indifferent, why not take the precaution just in case, you know? Right.
Well, and so to me, and I've said this, and I've been saying this on my other podcast, my rants. I'm gonna start one that just says y'all up. I'm gonna just start podcasting at 11 o'clock at night, 1 o'clock in the morning, just saying y'all up, because I got something to say.
Something on my mind. Something on my mind.
Yeah, something on my mind. Y'all up. One of the things that did come to my mind, though, and I didn't rant about it, but I am concerned about it. And that is that all of these things that we're seeing, to me, are not isolated incidents. I don't see COVID. I don't see the pandemic. I don't see George Floyd. I don't see what happened in Kentucky with the young lady in Kentucky. Her name escapes me right now, but you know what I'm talking about. What happened in Atlanta to the young man that was asleep at the Wendy's. What happened in Colorado last year with that other young man who was tackled and they injected him with something. He went into cardiac arrest. I don't see these things as isolated incidents. I see them all as sort of part of the same narrative. And that really gets to what we're talking about, which is, am I really my brother's keeper, right? Am I really my brother's keeper? In other words, do I have to qualify you before I'm concerned about you? Do I have to ask the question, what do you mean to me? What is your value to me? What is your value to society before I decide? And I'm thinking about Luke chapter 10 in the Bible that talks about the Good Samaritan, whereas the Bible says that when the Good Samaritan shows up, all he had to do was see the man on the side of the road, right? He didn't think about, well, our communities don't talk to each other. We don't have anything to do with each other. He didn't think about all that. He just saw that the man was in need. And so I'm trying to understand, what is it that we have to do as a society, or what do we need to start teaching in our homes? And unfortunately, I don't really think it's about African Americans. Let me just be real, because I think as a family unit, we are intrinsic. We concerned about one another. We just talked about it. It takes the village. We always refer to each other as we and us and brother and sister, and I mean, we all related. So we kind of have that sense. But what causes someone to see Rodney King and just not see him as a person? And you're in LA, so you know that when the record came out of all the words that was being said while they were beating him, that many of those words, let me use this word, thingified, made Rodney not a person, but a thing. And it's easy to beat a thing as long as it ain't a person. What do we need to be doing at home to help our young people not see each other as things, but see each other as people?
Now, that's the bigger task, and that's a long journey. And we've thought after all this time that it's a journey that we're closer towards instead of further ahead. I like to tell people, or explain it in very simplistic forms, because I think some of it is really human nature. And it's going to take people on a very individual basis to pause, look at themselves, and say, I am wrong. So, for example, I like to give all the time, I went to UCLA. And from the moment you step on campus as a freshman, it is ingrained it's embedded in you that you see USC across town. That is your rival. That is your enemy. We go up against them. We are better than. From the moment you enter campus, you are taught that over and over again. Now, I have been away from college lifestyle for many, many years.
Right.
But let's say, as a business owner, I'm hiring, and two people come to my table. Mm-hmm. Application says UCLA, application says USC.
Right.
It is my innate instinct as a human being to pause and look at the UCLA application 2 seconds longer. I have to teach myself.
Wow.
I have to teach myself, Lana, hold on, pause. This person from USC might be more qualified. Look, they might have more work experience, but I have to do the self-work. Now, that's a very simplistic explanation, but on a larger scale, that's what we're facing, because you naturally want to gravitate towards your tribe.
Right.
Whatever your tribe might be, whether or not your tribe is better or not. But like I said, that's a very simplistic explanation. So it's going to take people to do the individual work to say, hold on, I'm in this elevator and I'm feeling uncomfortable because there's two other Black people here. Why do I feel that way? They've not really shown me any reason why they were a threat.
Right.
Or I have, I'm in the police force and I'm in the potential situation to arrest this person. How can I de-escalate this? Why do I have to escalate this just because this person is of a color and I perceive myself to be at a threat? But it takes inner work, and people, it is human nature. Now we can go into the psychology. It is human nature not to want to look in the mirror. It's human nature to want to hierarchy, classify. I am better than this person because, and you have to fabricate the because I live on this side of town, because I got $2 in my pocket, and because this person is brown, because this person is red, because this person is Black. That is human nature, and it takes the individual to say, I'm wrong for that. And that's where we're at. A lot of people are not wanting to say, I'm wrong for that. This country was built on that.
Right. And I think from your perspective, I know this is a simplistic example that you use, but when you've got generations of UCLA, I mean, it's generational, right? I used to teach at Tennessee State, and we had, oh my God, you had people that came in as students at TSU whose moms and fathers met at TSU, right? And so as far as they're concerned, if it wasn't for TSU, they wouldn't exist. You know what I mean? I mean, it can really get complicated. Their grandparents got their degrees from TSU. And so you're talking about an undoing of multiple generations of indoctrination that have gone to make an ideology or an ethos or a mentality that I'm supposed to look at the usage. Matter of fact, I should rig the whole HR system and make sure that everybody that I hire is from UCLA. Why not? Because to me, I'm helping myself.
You're helping your tribe. You're helping your, and that is something, like I said, it's ingrained in you. You're taught that from the very beginning, and it takes a lot. And we have allowed this to build we're going on 500 years now.
Yeah.
So for us to think that it's magically going to be, oh, we're sorry. Like, we've seen in the last few weeks, a lot of corporations have, now, the light bulb is clicked on and we're going to change this and we're going to change our behavior and we're going to invest so many dollars. So the day before that, you didn't realize it was wrong.
Right.
But it's so ingrained in this culture as Americans.
And then I wonder how much we talk a lot about, 1964, you had all the marches. Before that, you had D-Day, you had Double D-Day, where students, came out of their schools and whatnot. They were fire hosed, dogs were sicked on them. You had the Edmund Pettus Bridge, you had all the, the Montgomery boycott and all that. And so you had agitation. You had agitating the system, agitating the so-called leaders of the time. But it all led to what we call legislation, 1964, right? It all led to some degree of legislation. And King even would say that legislation really was just that, legislation to get people to treat you nice. They just be nice to me, right? But just because you can legislate people to be nice to you does not mean you change their heart, right? Yes. And so you wonder if, again, I'm using your vernacular, I'm using your example, if you implemented policies and procedures to even out a system that should never have been uneven to begin with. Everyone who has the qualification should have an equal opportunity to the open position. That we shouldn't even have an issue. But because of this indoctrination, somebody is bringing an issue to the table. Now we have to implement policies and procedures, affirmative action, that somebody got a problem with. So how important is it to have the legislations and the policies and all of those things in order to even the playing field when all of a sudden those things get political? Help me out with that. I mean, how important, if that's all we have as a tool to even the playing field, and even that process is marred in politics, you saw the news. Our current president has commuted the sentence of his friend. Now you have thrown a monkey wrench in what is supposed to be an even process. Justice is supposed to be blind. Or blind.
Well,
I'm sorry, I'm asking some.
No. I think, and this is, history has taught me this. And I think this is one of the things that we as Black people really need to understand, that we would like legislation to be implemented that really assist us to balancing out things, to evening the scales. But I think we really need to understand collectively, widespread as a community, that nobody's really coming to save us. They can give us some tokens here and there. They can give us some tokens there because they're hoping that it pacifies us enough to shut us up, that we're quiet for a while until the next thing sparks up or whatever. But we need to come to terms with the fact that a lot of things are done politically, are knee-jerk responses to just get us to be quiet, okay? So we need to implement some stuff within ourselves to shift the dynamics of what we're seeing.
Give me some ideas. Give me some examples of what kind of things do you think we should be thinking through?
Okay, so let me digress a little bit. So after the Rodney King civil unrest, what happened was two things. The community said, okay, we know as a Black community, we need to take onus. We need to take ownership of our community and make some changes. So what you saw was the element that was the problem, the criminal element in our communities that was a problem. They said, okay, the Bloods and the Crips, they made a pact. after Rodney King. But at the same time, it was along the promise that at the same time, politicians were going to create legislation to assist the Black community. So you had an organization that popped up in LA called Rebuild LA. It was a nonprofit with legislation that was supposed to donate money, resources to build up Black businesses and the community. And, it was all the rainbows and fairies and unicorns, and it was going to be a wonderful thing, right? But right from the get-go, it was headed by Peter Uberoth. I don't know if you know that baseball.
Not familiar.
He's a white baseball man that was based in Orange County. Now, I think in our previous talks, you're familiar with the dynamics of the geography of Los Angeles. So Orange County is nowhere near Watts, Compton, or whatever. So legislation was already out of touch, which we see happening over and over again when this legislation comes in, when it pertains to us. It's like, oh, we know, okay, we see it now, but that's out of touch with what we really need.
Right.
So what I'm saying is there's 2 points, 2 aspects. The community, we as a community have to take onus, and we also have to demand at the same time that relevant, effective legislation be implemented to benefit our communities. So
okay, now I'm gonna ask the question, because when you say what you're saying, and we have the cynicism of some of our electorate that is saying my vote don't matter, right? In other words, they're basically saying because we always say all politics is local, right? And so many of the things that you're talking about, these are down ballot elections. And if I can't get you excited about the presidential election, then doggone it, some of the people that we need to do the things that you're talking about are not going to be in position. Follow? So,
True.
So now we're having this. You're talking about having legislation that is considerate and contextual to my community, Watts, right? How do you do that when you've got 40% of the electorate actually showing up that are registered to vote actually showing up, and the rest of them feeling like their vote don't matter? And yet we need the vote, in my perspective, this is my own idea, we need that vote to get the right people in office who can be held accountable to our communities, and yet we can't get everybody to be fired up enough to go vote. How do we do that?
Well, in every community, there are people that are central to that community, that have a voice in that community, that have respect in that community, that has the ability to preach, teach, talk to that community. Years and years ago, that's what the strength of Black churches were for. That was the meeting point for getting the message out, for getting the movement out. I think that's why we can say that Martin Luther King was so successful in the work that he did, because churches were very key meeting grounds for movement message in the Black community. So what we need to do in our community is find who it is that has the strongest voice, and each community is different. So my Black urban community in Los Angeles is very different. Need-wise, ability to move-wise, is very different than what we might see in Indianapolis or the Black community in Seattle. But each of these communities are individual and unique, but they have that person that has the capability to reach, touch the people in that community and start to make some shift. Like, we need to get you to the polls.
Right.
How do we organize? And this is why we need to. So here in Los Angeles, you just heard on social media Snoop Dogg. He's saying, I've never voted before in my life, but you know what? I think I'm going to vote now. So, but he has a great impact on the Black community.
He's an influencer.
Yes. So who better to say, you know what, we're going to have, poll drives, and I'm going to use myself an example, because I can take that leadership voice and I can mobilize the Black vote in my community. Each community has that person that can mobilize to make these changes, to get us to the polls.
And I'm also going to say it this way. I posted something earlier on yesterday. Somebody was sort of challenging me with the fact that the millennial group wasn't feeling as though and I'm not endorsing a particular candidate. I'm just telling you what the post said. The post said that the millennial group was not excited about the Biden campaign. They were saying, well, he's not getting us excited. He's not listening to our community. I'm not excited about that campaign. And so one of the statements that I made was, number one, this, we really got to get beyond this idea that Biden needs to save us or that Biden needs to get you excited, right? This particular election is less about voting for Biden and more about voting against what's been going on in Washington, D.C. for the past 4 years. Again, the commuting of the sentence of somebody's friend on yesterday, somebody should be like, that takes the cake. That's it, right? When you put personal relationships into politics, somebody should be saying that's it. So the idea that I need to get Biden and his campaign to get me excited is, to me, kind of the wrong way to look at this thing, at least in this season. I'm just throwing it out for free. And so I said, this is bigger than Biden. This campaign is bigger than Biden.
Yes, it is. We have to get 45 out of office. We have to get his cronies moved out the way. But also, in turn, we need to understand that the younger generation needs something else. They're tired of older people being responsible for how the course of their life plays out, and justifiably so. They've got new ideas, new ways of doing things, new challenges, and they don't want to see their grandfather making rules, regulations for their lives. It's understandable the way they feel, but at the same time, we need to explain to them that just for this particular small moment in time, while we're constructing the puzzle, we're putting the puzzle pieces in place, and we need to move this out of the way so that we can start to put some fresh faces in your age bracket with some fresh thoughts, to bring those to the table. But right now, at this point in time, where we're at, we're fighting so many challenges, not only the presidential, but all of it. Right. We just need everybody to focus on this one goal, this one task at hand, to move him out the way so that we can start to implement some of these changes that are desirable to you as millennials.
Yeah. And I even went this far with it too. And to your point, it's one thing to say we need change. And it's another thing to actually put pen to paper, get on a dry erase board, have start throwing ideas against the wall, creating matrices and whatnot. Because even telling somebody like Snoop Dogg, I think I'm going to vote. Well, okay, that's great, but there's still a process to voting, right? You can't just wake up one day and say, I'm going to go vote and not register. You can't just say, I'm going to vote and not register and not pay attention to where you registered, right? You can show up at the wrong place, right? So, and we know that there's systemic things that are going on to suppress the vote. Right, so now you got to get around all of those things. Added to that, the social distancing, right? So you've got lines in Georgia around the block and next door for people who are trying to vote because they limited the number of polling places, right? So it's to get up one day and say, oh yeah, I want to vote. I'm gonna vote. Well, that also begs the question, what steps do you need to take to vote? Right? There's more to it. Am I missing it?
I was teasing, I was joking with my mother the other day, and I was like, we need to plan some voting day events like they do when big concert tickets come out or when the iPhone is released, where, we as Black people, collectively camp out and save spots, that the night before, because this voting season, because they have really tried to restrict our vote, suppress our vote, and people need to really be aware of what's going on. And we just recognize that, what was that, Atlanta elections, people had to wait hours upon hours. But we need to start strategizing today about how we are going to vote this come November, because it is going to be a task. It is going to be a test of fortitude. Like, I am going to stand out here. Not only am I going to stand out here and potentially risk my health, but, I am voting in the future of the next 4 years of where America is going. And that is going to be no easy feat. And we need to really understand that and start to be proactive about planning how we're going to strategize that. Like I said, if it calls for us camping out and save the spot, I don't know how, I'm not the one, but I know we need to start planning.
Or mail-in ballots. I mean, that's obviously under siege right now by the bully pulpit. Mail-in ballots are under siege. That's what my family and we did absentee, and I walked them in, but we did do absentee where they came to the house, we filled them out and took them in. But again, my son just turned 18. He missed the date to actually register, so he didn't get to register in the primary. So we had to fix that again. It's just always more steps. My daughter, remember, she was in college, right? They were supposed to be in school, okay, until COVID. Well, because of COVID, she wasn't on campus. She was at home. So they wanted her to go back to school in order to vote. These are things we got, like you say, we got to think about. And I don't know about you, but we have a multiplicity of issues. We got economic development. We got criminal justice. We've got healthcare, health disparities. We've got infant mortality, maternal mortality. We've got economic development, entrepreneurship, solopreneurship. We got all of these things that we need to deal with. And I don't know about you, but I just tend to believe that we got enough people in our community who are smart enough and who are gifted and passionate enough about whatever those issues are that we can tackle. It's kind of like we can walk and chew gum at the same time. We can talk about criminal justice. We can talk about economic justice and disparities and equity without sacrificing other aspects of the conversation. How can I say this? To say that healthcare disparities is important doesn't suggest that recidivism or reentry is less important. And it seems like we're caught up in this, everybody needs to be on the same page. Well, we got too many issues for everybody to be.
True.
The only page we all need to be on right now is voting. That's the one page we need to be on. Outside of that, we should be able to get more than one conversation to happen at one time. Am I missing it?
Yeah, you should have more than one conversation, or we should have more than one conversation. And I think this is one of the things that we've always struggled with is something happens within the Black community, and then we have a reactive response, but we don't have an agenda. So nobody really planned. You mean that
happens in LA too?
So nobody planned for George Floyd. I mean, we historically it happens again and again, but the painful visual that George Floyd provided the nation,
in slow motion.
Right. So we had no idea that was coming, but we had no plan for, okay, so we're upset, we're mad, we're taken to the streets, we're talking, but we did not have a plan for okay, well, now what? You're protesting, but what's your agenda? What do you want? And so we're like, The reason the Montgomery boycotts were successful was because it happened. And they said, okay, hold on a second. Let's get ourselves together. Let's collect our thoughts. Let's get a plan together. And so then Rosa Parks came, but they had a plan. So she stood up. I'm not going to get off. And they said, this is what we want. We have our demands. If you do not meet our demands, this is what we're going to do. Mm-hmm. They didn't meet our demands. So then we implemented the plan. Mm-hmm. And we are going to stick to this plan until you give us what we want. Mm-hmm. Right now, we do not have a cohesive, collective agenda. Mm-hmm. We know what the issues are. We know we need jobs, we know we need housing, we need fair access to education, but we kind of pander like how to implement that. What's going to make that effective?
But But this is the ultimate. And to your point, if you're watching right now and you don't believe what she's saying, go over to the uniteforchange.org website, because right now we have a page called Gaps and Overlaps. Right? You can hit that link. and it will show you 47 demands or agenda items from roughly, 10 different organizations. Some of those items are the same. Some of them are, overlapping. Some of them don't. Some of them, are gaps. And so that's our point. Our point is that at some point, we as a community needs to come together and evaluate and rank and order, what do we need to see happen today? What needs to happen next week? What we need to see happen next month, next year, right? Because some things will take a legislative session to go down. Some things we can plan right now, but they're not going to start happening until January 1 until they actually go into the State House. So we can prepare now, but nothing's going to happen right now. But until we talk, and this is what Community Conversation was all about. It's about us having these conversations about how do we plan for the next step and the next stage of what needs to happen in our community so that we can take full advantage of the protests and all the marching and all the screaming and yelling and all the agitation. It must lead to action. And I think that's what I hear you saying.
Yes, and it also goes into play with why we need to rally and get everybody to the polls, because once we elect this new individual into office, we need to also be ready at the door, knocking on the door, saying, okay, we've now cohesively got a plan of action. You're here in office. This is what we would like to roll out on week 1. This is what we need to be rolling out on month 2, and this is whatever. But we need to have something in place for when this new person comes into office, because how much longer are we going to stay in this spot?
Yeah.
At some point in time, we're going to have to, how much longer are we going to stay in this spot, allow some knee-jerk responses to pacify us, and then we end up 10 years later witnessing the same things over and over again? No, let's stop this. The millennials, they're doing a wonderful job. We all know that the greatest advances in civil change have always happened because of the younger generation. They're here, they're on front, they're mobilized. So let's capitalize on this moment. So when we elect a new person in the office, have the plan in place. We need to cohesively come together and get a plan in place. You said you have 47
demands or agenda items.
So whoever it is that are running these various organizations, technology is great. We need to come together, sit down. Okay, this is not a priority right now. These are the 3, 4, 5 things that when new president walks into office, this is what we're presenting. This is what we're bringing to the table. This is how you need to help us make this happen. We're going to take ownership on our part as a community, because I really want to stress that. That we as a community are responsible for some of the change that needs to take place, but also legislation is a key element as well. And we need to solidify. There's no way in the world we can come with 47 various different things and they take us seriously.
Right, and I totally agree. I totally agree. And again, this is what she's talking about is the very reason why we have the Urban Servant Leadership Conference, August the 15th. It's a virtual conference this year, and the idea is exactly what Lana is saying. That's exactly the point. It is for us to utilize the technology to come together so that we can begin to have dialogue with one another about what is it that we need to see happen for ourselves and our communities, so that we can move forward with some type of unity, some type of vision. So if you're watching this right now, I don't care. I wish I had I think I have the page. Let me see if I have the page up. Let me see if it comes up. If you are, it's working on it, so we'll see if it comes up. Yeah, here it is. Hold on. I want to go through this. Lana, I wish you could see this. If you get a chance, go to the uniteforchange.org and you can see this page. It's called Gaps and Overlaps. It's in the very front slider. So I'm opening this up, and this is what I want to say to you. First of all, I want you to pre-register for the conference. Go ahead and pre-register. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything, right? Now, look, and I don't even have time to go through all these organizations. I'm just going to mention them. If you are a member of or representative of the African American Coalition of Indianapolis, African American Legacy Fund Indianapolis, American Descendants of Slavery, Black Ministers Alliance, building relationships, inspiring, developing, getting engaged, Circle Up Indy LLC, Community Resource Team, Concerned Clergy, Don't Sleep, Economic Freedom Fighters Indiana, Faith in Indiana, Family of Lana Reid, Fathers and Family, Indiana Black Expo, Indiana Black Legislative Caucus, Indiana Commission on the Social Status of African American Males, Indiana Healthy Marriage and Family Coalition, Indianapolis Ministerium, Indy 10, Black Lives Matter, Indian Denominational Ministers Fellowship, NAACP, Indianapolis Chapter, National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America, National Coalition on Educating Black Children, Race and Cultural Relations Leadership Network, Rise Indy, Rock Initiative, Ross Foundations, Starfish Initiative, Union District of Churches, Urban League, Young Lions Network. Okay, I'm tired. But if you are any one of those organizations, and there are probably more, I think they're the Young Ladies for Change or something like that. I need to get them up here. Ministerium, they're not up here yet. That's two more I got to add. If you represent any of those organizations, y'all need to be represented in the Urban Servant Leadership Unconference, because we need to stop seeing people do what you said earlier, and that is legislating for people across the street. Let me tell them what they need up in Watts while we down here in Orange County, California. Right? Let me tell y'all what y'all need. Y'all can't seem to get together, so we'll do it for you. No, we need to be able to talk amongst ourselves and determine for ourselves what we need for us.
And also when we get focused, when we get a concrete, solidified plan of action to present what we need, it allows us to stay focused.
Right.
Because what happens is a lot of times you'll have the politicians, they'll come in, or these corporations, they'll come in to Black communities, to our communities, for example, to address the need of employment. So you'll have your fast food restaurants or your big box stores, and they'll say, well, we're coming into the urban communities and we're going to open up, 6 locations, and we're going to provide 600 jobs. But if we are not focused as a Black community, we don't understand that, yes, there's 600 jobs, but those are not 600 jobs that give us the ability to realize the American dream.
Right.
Those are jobs that provide us an opportunity to exist.
Not a living wage.
That's right. So we need to stay focused on when they throw stuff at us to shut us up. Is it actually what we need to live the American dream? Because I think sometimes we get off track. We think like, oh, they gave us a gift.
They took down a monument.
No. That is not really going to get us on even playing skill. That's not really going to give us our fair shake. So when we create this agenda, so you say, okay, now your fast food restaurants, you want to help us? We want you to grant within our urban community funds for somebody to open up their franchise, and we want you to grant or train somebody within our community to open up a franchise within our community to give an opportunity to create generational wealth from that franchise in our community. I say, so help us that way. Don't just open up a job for $7 an hour.
Exactly.
Give us an opportunity through your corporate strategy to create generational wealth, to bring wealth into our communities. Okay. So employment is one of the issues that we're facing. But this is a cohesive element that when all your groups come together and talk, hopefully this is one of the plan items that we create that, okay, yeah, we need education, we need jobs, we need whatever. But how does that pan out? What does that look like? Don't just say it. Have a plan of action, bullet item, and this is what we need, this is what we want. Deliver it.
Now, and having said that, again, you're in LA. Right? And so my thinking is, and I hate to stop this conversation because we're going so good, but my thinking is, how is it that we can also provide a sort of boilerplate for what we need to be thinking about, not only locally, but also how we need to be thinking nationally and regionally? Because I don't know about you, but I know that Indianapolis is not the only city that has rising homicide rates within minority communities. Okay? I'm pretty sure that we're not the only one in the country that's having those issues. We're not the only ones in the country that are, I mean, there are some national trends that are going on. Health is one of them, right? But there are other issues that need a national agenda. There are things that may need a regional agenda, and then there are things that need a statewide and a local agenda, right? And so I don't know if the Urban League or the NAACP or, SCLC or whatever other organizations are thinking that way to say, hey, as a national organization, this is what we're focused on. This is what we're telling y'all we're dealing with on a national level. Now you add what you're doing on a local level to that so that you can have a comprehensive plan, right, for your community that is considerate and not in competition with what we're dealing with on a national level. Does that make sense?
True.
Is that asking too much?
Well, let me first tackle the homicide issue that you raised in the beginning of the comment. And this goes back to what has risen from the protests is this phrase of defund the police, which actually means redistribute some of the funds to community resources. But one of the things that I want to challenge my people to really think about when we're saying defund the police, do we really understand that means that we have to change a lot of behaviors in our own community? Now, we need to stop saying black on black crime because that is not the case. What we have is crime in the black communities, which is predicated by other elements. But we need to take onus once again on us as a community. We need to realize that back in the day, we had less need for police involvement, police interaction in our communities because we had community police like your grandmother. Your grandmother used to sit on the front porch. And because the community was beholden to her, respected her, the people that walked that borderline of criminal element knew that just walking past her, I feel shame, I feel disrespect to my community. That lessened the chance that you're going to have criminal elements manifest itself in those communities. So we had community police. Now, like I said, when you have these issues of we want to defund the police, we want less police interaction in our communities, we really need to understand what we're saying. We are saying that we are going to take back our own communities. And what does that look like? Right. Because that's not really legislation. That's not really us going to our politicians and saying, help us. Mm-hmm. That's me looking at my neighbor and saying,
I got you.
I got you. Or, I noticed your son was out there yesterday playing with some riffraff, because now we really don't get involved in our communities, but we want our communities to change. How is that going to happen?
Got to be us. What they say, nobody gonna save us but us. And I think that's what I hear them saying. But from your perspective, what you're saying is that we must be prepared to be responsible for what that's going to look like.
Yes, indeed.
Right?
Yes,
especially indeed. Somebody, Tracy Hans has pointed out that we have to think about mental health. So that means that, if we're saying we're defunding police and reallocating funds to other services or other resources, then we can't buy into this thing where untrained people are out in our community trying to assess what they call mental health first aid. They're not trained to really assess what's going on when you've got a big kid who's on the spectrum. And nobody knows that he's on medication, hadn't taken his medication today, and you're not trained to know what you're looking at. And so we end up calling the police anyway because we got an issue because we did not take the responsibility of setting up an infrastructure or the capacity to do what's needed now that we have reallocated the resources into different areas. And you're going to end up calling the police anyway because you don't know what to do.
We have over time, we have asked law enforcement to do more than what their job originally was described to do. So you go to training to be a police officer for a limited number of weeks. I'm not sure. I guess it varies for different districts, but that does not qualify you to be able to handle somebody with mental health issues. And be these mental health issues, be it biologically or be it drug induced, street drug induced. It does not train you to deal with homelessness. You are not qualified to deal with a lot of the issues that we expect law enforcement to handle. So I remember I started UCLA in '87, and that was around the time that United States passed legislation to close down a lot of mental health institutions. And what they did was they just threw a lot of people just out on the streets.
Right.
So I would be walking around campus, and there was homeless people on the benches causing chaos in the stores in Westwood or whatever, and police would start to be called onto the scene. But that was not what their training was for. So what we need to do is, when we're talking once again about defund the police, we're talking about redistributing funds. So you need to start hiring or setting up situations of teams, task force to deal with different issues. Now, also I want to say, when it comes to mental health in the Black community, we used to, right, wrong, or indifferent, we used to take care of our own mental health on our own. You used to see Uncle so-and-so being kept at Aunt Sarah's house and being cared for, provided for, taken care of, protected in the community. So it was less likely that he was going to have run-ins with law enforcement because his community cared for him. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? We all had the cousins, so-and-so that was in the back room had his own, but we took care of our own issues as a community.
Mm-hmm. I get that. And here in Indiana, and man, I got to get to this. We got another community meeting that I got to head to, so I'm gonna have to pull off. But just you raised a point that reminded me that here in Indianapolis, in particular, we have a hospital system that they were building a new mental health facility, and it was on the front page of the Indianapolis newspaper. On the front page, they said, "Well, we're introducing a new model." A new treatment model for mental illness in the community. We got multi-bed facility being built and all this kind of stuff. And so I read the article, and the interesting thing is they said, okay, so you're going to get if you're brought in and you've got to have an episode of some sort, and you're brought in, so they'll give you a bed for 5 days, and the new model says you get 5 days, and after that 5 days, then we release you back to the community so that the community resources can take over from there. And I stood around and said, what community resource? What are they talking about? And again, oftentimes I was pastor of the church at the time. And so that's a dog whistle, meaning, are we going to release them back to the church? Mm-hmm. Y'all deal with it. I said, well, what training and what help and what support and what, mm-hmm. What do you mean? Release them back to the community. To the community resources. What resources? Now again, depending on what community you're talking about, some communities might have resources and some communities might not. But those that don't, what are you going to do to build the capacity to make sure that we can actually respond to those crises when they happen? Because if you don't have the capacity, what's going to happen? We right back to the same thing. Call the police.
Thank you. And you have an individual who is having contact with law enforcement. Mm-hmm. So then they go into the jail system. They're referred back out to this community resource for 5 days. Then they're kicked back out. They have contact once again with law enforcement. They're put back. It's a perpetual cycle. It's a perpetual cycle.
Man, I gotta go. My God, this is a great conversation. Sister Lana, can we have you back on? Can we talk more? I want to talk about basements and I want to talk about basements and blossoms.
You want to talk about my book? Yeah,
I want to talk about your book.
We talk about racial. We talk about racial microaggressions in there. About my life being called, you're black, but you're not really black, and white people not thinking they're racist when they say such things. But yes, we can come back on any time.
We got to talk about that. So we're gonna get you back on. Faye gonna reach back out to you, get you back on. I want to thank you for spending some time with us all the way from LA. God bless you. Again, Just so y'all know, I'm going to say it again. Please go in and pre-register for the Urban Servant Leadership Conference. We got people coming in from all over the country. It's virtual, so it don't matter where you are. So Sister Tracy Hans, I think you in Mississippi, I think, Tracy. I'm not sure exactly where you are. But we've had people on today from Nashville, Tennessee. We've had somebody on from New York today. So I know the message is getting out of what it is that we're doing here, trying to bring the community conversation together so that we can begin to really think about critically and have conversations about what we want to see for our own communities moving beyond the protests and the pandemic, all right? What are we going to do for ourselves as we move beyond this? Ain't nobody going to save us but us. And I don't know about you, but I believe what King said. He said, if you can't fly, then run. He said, if you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. He said, but whatever you do, you got to keep moving forward. And so that's what we endeavor to do with these conversations. This is about moving forward. And it doesn't matter if you like Tracy in Alabama. It doesn't matter if you like Sister Reid, if you're in LA, if you like the other brother that came in New York. Doesn't matter. Brother Gregory, Pierre, he's in New York. Doesn't matter where you're from. We have many of the same issues going on, and I guarantee you that the enemy don't want us to talk. The enemy wants to keep us separated because the enemy knows the power of divide and conquer. But when we begin to come on and have conversations like this between LA, Indianapolis, New York, and Alabama, Nashville, Tennessee, we begin to share ideas and creativity and different things that might work where we are, that you could try where you are, tell us how that worked, those kind of things. And we have communication and conversations. You never know what could happen when we come together. So I want to thank you, Sister Reid, for your time, your energy, your effort, your passion. Keep doing it. We're going to holler at you again, all right?
Thank you for having me. I had a pleasure. And I just want to say one thing, because we touched on it. Everybody, please make sure you are registered to vote, as Snoop Dogg has shown us. Even if you are a brother and sister who's had a couple of contacts with the law, research it. You still have the ability to register to vote. We need you out there in November. Please do that.
Yeah, and even if you're a former felon and the laws in your state say that you lost your vote, we need to change that, okay? We need to change that. They can't be taking your tax money and then you can't exercise your fundamental right when you do go back to work, right? Come on now.
That's right.
Let's just
That's
be
right.
real. So
That's right.
We got a lot to talk about. We'll talk about it a little later. God bless y'all. I got to get off. I got to go to another meeting. I'm late. Sister Evelyn, she's like, where are you at, Pastor? I'm coming. I'll see y'all in just a minute. God bless. You've just been on Community Conversation. I'm Pastor G. Go to uniteforchange.org and join the movement, or definitely pre-register for the conference. I will see y'all again on next week, or you might see me rant sometime during this week if something go down, because y'all know I will. God bless y'all. I'll chat with y'all later. Peace.